Have you ever stopped to ask yourself a question most people never dare to ask? What if the very institution that promised to shape your mind, to unlock your potential, to guide your future, was actually the one that began to limit it before you even knew what limitation was? What if the moment you were handed a pencil, you weren't being empowered, you were being programmed? Imagine entering the world with eyes wide open, your heart pulsing with raw curiosity, your soul hungry to explore every sensation, every mystery, every emotion. As a child, you didn't need permission to wonder. You didn't need a reason to ask why. Wonder was your nature. And then, almost without warning, you were placed inside a structure, four walls, a desk, a fixed schedule. You were told when to speak, when to sit, when to run, when to stop. You were measured, compared, graded, corrected. And over time, the world outside that building, the world of spontaneity, intuition, play, and chaos, began to feel less real than the system you were told to obey. Now imagine spending not 1 year, not 2, but 12 or more in that system. Every day, year after year, learning more about how to conform than how to think. Being rewarded not for your depth, but for your discipline. Not for your originality, but for your obedience. And the deeper tragedy? You didn't even notice it happening. Because that's how effective the system is. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It erodes you, quietly, slowly. It replaces your questions with answers. It replaces your instincts with rubrics. It replaces your dreams with goals you didn't choose. So you grow up thinking your thoughts are your own. But what if they're not? What if many of your fears, your insecurities, your doubts, even your definition of success, what if they were planted in you? Not by nature, but by design. What if you've spent years chasing someone else's definition of achievement and calling it yours? Let's take that even further. What if the anxiety you carry, the pressure you feel to succeed, the guilt when you rest, the shame when you fail, what if those emotions were not signs that something is wrong with you, but signals that you've been trained to believe things that were never aligned with your soul? This isn't a conspiracy. This is the quiet operation of a machine invisible to the eye, but heavy on the mind. It doesn't operate with violence, it operates with structure, schedules, grades, policies, standardized tests, behavioral norms, and it starts before you can even question it. You're told to hold a pencil before you understand your own voice. You're told to sit still when your body wants to move. You're told to speak only when spoken to, even though your mind is bursting with curiosity. This is the beginning of the script. And unless it is questioned, unless it is seen for what it is, you don't just follow it, you become it. And that's why this journey matters. Because by the time we finish it, you won't just understand how this machine works, you'll see how to break free from it. Not in theory, not in rebellion for rebellion's sake, but in awakening, in remembering the parts of yourself that were never meant to be standardized, tested, or graded. Because the most dangerous cage is the one you don't see. And the most powerful form of liberation is remembering that you were never broken, you were only buried. And now we begin the excavation. So let's ask what few dare to ask out loud. What is the real purpose of school? We're told it's about education, about preparation for life. But is it really? Or has that narrative served more to comfort than to reveal? Schopenhauer once said that the greatest achievements of the human mind are often those it accomplishes not because of, but in spite of institutional education. And perhaps he saw what most of us only feel, this sense that school rarely liberates the soul, and more often boxes it in. That true understanding comes not from structured lessons, but from reflection, from wrestling with life, not from memorizing its footnotes. That suffering, solitude, and deep contemplation teach more than any textbook ever could. But instead, from the moment we enter the system, we are taught something else entirely. We are taught to follow, to fit in, to obey. We are taught that truth is whatever appears on the final exam. That creativity matters only if it fits the rubric. That curiosity is fine, but only if it doesn't slow the lesson plan. And so from the earliest age, children are trained not to stand out but to blend in. We are rewarded for sameness, punished for divergence. We are conditioned to chase gold stars and grades, not meaning, to equate silence with respect, conformity with intelligence, obedience with value. Ask yourself, when was the last time you were encouraged to truly know yourself in school? Not just your strengths and weaknesses on a test, but your emotional world, your desires, your intuition. Were you taught how to trust your inner compass, or were you trained to outsource truth to authority? Were you taught to sit with discomfort, to wrestle with paradox? Or were you pushed toward the safety of simple answers? This system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as it was designed. It doesn't want visionaries, it wants workers. It doesn't nurture the wild, it trims it. And when a child dares to deviate from the script, when they ask too many questions, feel too deeply, think too differently, they are not celebrated. They are often diagnosed, labeled, suppressed. The system prefers predictability over passion, silence over depth. A child who asks, "Why do I have to learn this?" is not seen as a budding philosopher, they are seen as a disruption, a problem to be managed, a cog that doesn't fit. But Schopenhauer warned, "Ustalent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." And school, tragically, is often where genius is first punished. Not because it's wrong, but because it threatens the structure, because it cannot be standardized, because it refuses to shrink. And so the damage begins early. And it's not just cognitive, it's emotional. How many of us carry wounds we can't explain? An invisible voice in our head saying we're not good enough. A fear of speaking our truth because we were once silenced. A hesitancy to try something new because we were once mocked. How many of us stopped painting, writing, dreaming, not because we lost interest, but because someone in a classroom told us we weren't good at it? This isn't childhood, it's indoctrination. It's the shaping of a human being into something manageable, something measurable, something safe. And yet the soul is not safe. The mind is not linear. The human spirit cannot be contained in a grade book. And that's what makes this question so urgent, because the longer we live without asking it, the longer we remain actors in someone else's story. The longer we mistake compliance for intelligence. The longer we wear masks that were never ours. So before we move forward, pause. Really pause. Look back. What part of you did you leave behind in school? What part of you learned to sit down, shut up, follow instructions when all you wanted was to express what was alive inside you? Those moments don't disappear. They shape you. They whisper in your quietest moments. And the question they ask is this: is it time to go back and reclaim what you left behind? If you're still with me, then something inside you already knows. Something was lost. But it doesn't have to stay that way, because what was buried can be unearthed. What was suppressed can be remembered. And what was molded by someone else can be reshaped by you. She'll ask for vulnerability, but offer none of her own. She'll want your secrets, your wounds, your fears only, to later use them as leverage, ammunition, or excuses. And you won't even realize when it happens. At first, she seems interested. She leans in, listens closely, mirrors your emotions. You think you're building a connection. You think she's different. But once she has what she wants, your trust, your openness, your emotional investment, their tone begins to shift. Suddenly, your honesty becomes too much. Your emotional depth becomes insecure. Your openness becomes weakness in her eyes. She might joke about your feelings, throw your past in your face during an argument, or twist your confessions into doubts about your masculinity. And the worst part? You'll blame yourself. You'll think you were too emotional, too intense, too open. But the truth is, she was never planning to meet you in that depth. She just wanted access, not responsibility. Power, not partnership. She wants to know your pain, but only so she can control the terms of how it affects her. And if you ever ask for reciprocity, for her to open up, for her to share her truth, you'll be met with deflection, denial, or even accusations. She'll say you're pressuring her, that she's just private, that you're too needy. But the reality is, her walls were never about protection. They were about manipulation. She gets to sit behind the glass while you bleed for her entertainment. And slowly, that imbalance starts to erode your sense of what love even is. You begin to mistake suffering for loyalty. You confuse instability with passion. You start believing that withholding is a sign of strength, and that expressing yourself is a form of weakness. You lose your compass. And that's exactly what she wants. Because once you start doubting yourself, you stop holding her accountable. You'll make excuses for her silence, her cruelty, her inconsistencies. You'll say, she's been through a lot, or she just needs time. You'll fill in the blanks she leaves with hope. But hope without evidence is self-destruction, and deep down, part of you knows it. You feel it in the way your chest tightens when she pulls away, in the way your stomach sinks when she praises another man in front of you, in the way your soul grows quiet when you realize she only wants parts of you, the convenient, strong, impressive parts, not the whole, messy, real you. But by then, you're already in too deep. You've invested too much, and the idea of starting over, of walking away, of facing the truth that terrifies you. So, you stay, you shrink, you adapt. You become a version of yourself that fits her moods, her needs, her narrative. And that's how you lose yourself piece by piece, smile by smile, compromise by compromise. But then comes the twist, when she senses you're slipping, when you finally start to pull away, when your energy begins to retreat, she'll switch. She'll offer just enough kindness to reel you back in. She'll cry, apologize, talk about a future. She might even show glimpses of the person you fell for in the beginning. But it's all calculated. It's not transformation, it's preservation. She's not changing because she loves you. She's adjusting because she's losing control. And as soon as she regains it, the cycle continues. The coldness returns. The criticism sharpens. The games resume. And you're left right where you started, confused, exhausted, and doubting your worth. Because that's the design. She thrives in uncertainty. She feeds on your confusion. The more you question yourself, the less you question her. And in her world, that's the ultimate win. But eventually, something breaks inside you, not with a bang, but with a quiet moment of clarity. You sit in silence long enough to hear your own voice beneath the chaos, and it no longer sounds like the man she trained you to be. It's not angry, not bitter, just done. The kind of done that doesn't argue, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. The kind of done that comes from exhaustion so deep, it rewires your instincts. You no longer crave her approval. You no longer fear her absence. You no longer wait for her to change. Because you've realized that the love you were fighting for never truly existed. It was a performance, a manipulation dressed as intimacy, a transaction disguised as connection. And what you gave? That was real. Your loyalty, your patience, your hope, your effort, that was real. But it was never met. It was never returned. You were in love with a mask, and now the illusion has finally cracked. This is the moment you reclaim yourself, not all at once, but choice by choice. You stop justifying disrespect. You stop apologizing for your emotions. You stop explaining your worth to someone who was never listening. And at first, it's hard. It's lonely. There's a withdrawal, a shaking off of habits and false hopes. But there's also power. Quiet, steady, unfamiliar power. The kind that doesn't roar, it hums, it builds. And soon, you start remembering who you were before her chaos became your compass. You begin to reconnect with your own rhythm, your own logic, your own peace. You no longer seek closure from someone who profits off your confusion. You don't retaliate. Don't try to prove a point. You just disappear from her world. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. She might still try to pull you back, with sudden warmth, with guilt, with carefully crafted texts or nostalgic traps, but they no longer land. Because now, you see the pattern. You've mapped it out. And once a man sees the pattern, he cannot unsee it. She will call you cold, distant, changed. She'll accuse you of being someone you're not. But that's because she only knew the version of you who bent, who tolerated, who gave everything just to earn half of what he needed. She never met the version of you who knew how to walk away. The version of you who doesn't beg to be chosen. The version who doesn't confuse chaos with love. And that version? He doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need to prove her wrong. He just needs to stay gone. Because healing doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes healing is the silence you keep, the boundary you don't explain, the peace you protect. You start to realize that true strength isn't loud, it's the discipline to choose peace over performance. to protect your energy like it's sacred, to never again entertain anyone who requires you to suffer just to be close to them. And maybe you don't heal overnight. Maybe there are days where you still miss the highs, the intensity, the illusion of connection, but over time, those cravings fade. What remains is clarity. What grows is self-respect. And one day you'll look back and realize that the greatest thing she ever did for you was force you to find the version of yourself that would never tolerate her again. Not out of hate, not out of spite, but because you finally understood real love doesn't play games. It doesn't confuse you. It doesn't drain you. Real love sees you, supports you, and strengthens you, and anything less isn't worth surviving for.